right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a live taping of One with the Films. This is episode number 56 for the movie Primer. Came out in 2004. Okay, make sure that 5 head of yours is center frame, otherwise we're going to cut off your face. But besides that, ready when you are, baby.
I'm waiting to see the frame on
Oh, here she comes.
YouTube real quick. Okay. Am I in center frame now?
Yeah. As long as you're center framed on your camera, you'll be fine on mine.
All right, sounds good. Yep. Okay, I think I should be better now. All right, let's get rolling. All right. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to read this, and you're going to listen. And you're going to stay on the line. You're not going to interrupt. You're not going to speak for any reason. Now, some of this you know. I'm going to start at the top of this page. Fashionable, yes. Talented, educated, nothing extreme. Like anyone, they varied. There were days of mistakes and laziness and infighting, birth. And there were days, good days, when by anyone's judgment, they would have been considered almost clever. No one would say that what they were doing was complicated. It wouldn't even be considered new, except maybe in the film bro circle jerk avoidance sense. They took from their surroundings what was needed and made of it something more. Now, hello, all you intellectuals. Welcome to OWTF 101, also known as One with the Films. Those of you who are smart enough to tune into this high-concept Brainiac podcast, we welcome you. Some of you may think this is simply a club of intellectuals, and you would be correct. For we are the smartest of the dumb, the himbos with the mambos, the I told you so, but you didn't remember, so the point is moot. Anyway, speaking of that, it's a moot point. Like a cow's opinion, it doesn't matter. And I am your dungeon maester. That I got to my film degree, and look where that got you. That I guess I too will go back to the beginning and then to the end and back to the middle for context, then do a flashback to when I was a kid, and then just tell you what happened because I'm a storyteller and that's how you tell a good story. I'm Kay, also known as Keegan or that movie man, and when the package is this pretty, no one cares what's inside. And for my co-host's intro, I shall do it in the spirit of this film. Aluminum phosphate paradox A to B. He's my double helix and genius of geniuses, the hot-to-go boy who loves to talk film and explore all things new. He's the smart one in this duo and not bad on the eyes. The Einstein who's dying inside. It's Naf. Care to introduce yourself?
I will never be able to do it better than you do, so no. But also, yes, hey guys, I'm Naf, seen by Naf. I'm here, one half of this beautiful, where we are the slices of bread, you know, the plain, boring sides to the meat in the middle, usually. That's us.
Yes.
But like exactly. One side is white bread and the other is like a light rye.
Yeah. I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
Like artisan sourdough is the vibe that I try to give off.
Yeah.
Often it's just fancy white bread, but nonetheless, it's better than French.
Well, yeah.
And you're just a nice quesadilla, aren't you?
Yeah. Quesadilla. I hardly know.
I hardly know her.
All right, good.
And joining us today for his, in theory, second appearance on our acid trip of a show. You know him from Dyad and the Force. You can feel his charisma and charm across the galaxy, and I hope you feel it right now, because just like a Jedi Master who's one with the Force, he's here in spirit. He's that icon who co-founded DyadCon, the force of change and joy to experience. It's Brandon, aka Darth Choco, but until he finds his way, until he finds the path towards manifestation of self beyond life through the means of manipulating the cosmic force. We have Dave filling in. Say hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave. Dave.
Well said, Dave.
Actually, this
Dave,
guy with
we
the
will
jokes
have to bleep
all the
that.
time.
You aren't allowed to say that word anymore.
Yeah, it's not 2004 anymore, Dave. Okay.
Come on, Dave.
It's hard to be a white man, in this day and age.
Tell me about it, brother.
Silly,
and so
but, a reminder to listeners that you can find One with the Films on your favorite podcasting platform of choice, as well as live and on demand right here. If you're in the live chat, please feel free to join in the conversation. We always love to hear from you. And if you listen on demand, don't worry, we still love you. That being said, Kay, why don't you tell us a little more about what we're doing here today?
Absolutely. So the weekly watch list is what happens when a bunch of friends with unique and wonderful taste in films have tried too hard for too long to finally share and discuss their favorite films with one another. And if you've been around a while, you know the shtick already. However, for the uninitiated, the idea is that for every episode, at least one person is watching the chosen film for the very first time. It's all about having a space for creators to share the art that matters most to them and give them a platform to show us all why. So if you like listening to a bunch of nerds geek out and force each other to watch and discuss their favorite films for the very first time, feel free to follow or subscribe. Send us to your friends, and if you like, you can activate those notifications so you never miss an episode. And of course, we're all on all of your favorite social platforms as well. Links are in the description below.
Beautiful, sweet. So Dave, what is a brilliant film that not enough people have seen? Oh shit, that's a good choice. Kate, get to interpret for me.
You're right. Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a Primer. I mean, as Dave elegantly said, it's Primer made by Scott Carruth. You said right, Dave, or Carruth?
Yeah, not quite sure which. But
understood.
Dave was also saying it with so much like emotion. Like I feel like you always know what Dave is thinking. That's what I really like about how he articulates himself.
Dave is really nice because, and Dave, I know, try not to look embarrassed here, but I really appreciate that Dave just is who Dave is.
Yeah.
Like there's no if, ands, or buts about it. But as Dave said, we are talking about Primer made by Scott Carruth / Carruth. Made in 2004, and and
I know Dave was thinking it before, but I wonder if UK, through channeling the midichlorians to connect with our being beyond the stars, can you tell me in one sentence why Choco chose this film?
Breathe.
Just breathe.
You don't need a large budget to wow people with a concept.
Beautiful. Stunning. The tagline for this film is beautiful as well. It's literally, but what if it works? Like that's where is it? It is.
That is a fucking good tagline. That's a fucking great
tagline. What would you do if it works? Something like that. It's great. But Kay, I'm curious. So story time for listeners. So we were at DietCon with all of our TikTok friends, an event that we were a part of and helped kind of put together as well. But we were all of our TikTok friends, all the Star Wars creators. We met up for Star Wars Day. It was wonderful. But we would often break off into sections and go to different areas, right? And there was a day where UK were off shopping with like some of our crew, and I stayed back at the pool and the spa with some of the other boys, and I got most of them booked in for episodes, which was great. I'm doing the Lord's work.
It was awesome.
This film was pitched to me in a spa by Choco. He was just sitting across from me, and I was like, "So Choco, we're going to get you on for your own episode." And he was like, "Well, yeah, have you seen Primer?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Low budget, sci-fi, early 2000s." I was like, "Lock it in." And I sent it to him, and on his phone right there, he booked it right in, which was beautiful. But I knew nothing about this film going into it. I tried also to not read the blurb or anything like that, so I just got in and watched, and like, whoa. I did actually, there's a list that I follow on Letterboxd called Fantastic Films Under 90 Minutes or something like that. And I've been using that a lot lately because me and one of my friends, like we like to hang out any time we get, and he lives like, 6-7 minutes away from me. So I'll just drive there, watch a movie, come home. And we got in this habit of like finding quick movies, sub 90 minutes to watch. And this list is fantastic. So if you guys need quick films, you're like Kay, you're very time poor, and you need films to watch that don't take up a lot of time, look up that list on Letterboxd. It's like high-rated films.
It's
under 90
really
minutes.
helpful.
Yeah.
It's great, especially if you're looking at films to not watch. Just like, not that you don't want to watch them because they're bad films, just like you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna add that to the watch list. This is great. This is gonna be good.
Yeah.
But then I'm just gonna watch TikToks for the next hour.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is to break the cycle, break the matrix, you know. But Kay, what did you know about this? Did you know about this film before it was recommended to us?
I had heard about it. Like I
Where did you
watched
hear
like like there was a couple of like movie podcasts
Watch
or
Mojo,
like movie
top 10 time travel
shows.
films.
Kind of like that. Like it wasn't Watch Mojo, but I think it was the John Campea show. Like at some point Primer came up. Like it was one of those things where it's like sometimes it just in conversation I would just hear people occasionally mention this movie. Like I had no idea what it was about. I think I had heard maybe it was about time travel. But all I kind of knew was the vague sense that this was a great sci-fi movie made for nothing. And it probably had something to do with time travel was all I knew. And, but going with that, Nath, we're about ready to get into this deep dive, but, before we do you have some fun facts about this movie?
Yeah, I do. And there are lots of fun facts about this film in particular. It's one of those like, yeah, like it was put together like nice and cheap. And so like, hear me out here. I've been diving deep into this.
I'm very excited.
So, on a budget of $7,000 US or 0.00058333333 recurring of one Hell or High Water, the film brought in $28,000 in its opening weekend, with a total worldwide gross of over $841,000, or 120 times its budget. And now I was sure that would be some kind of record, but I was wrong. In fact, there's another film with a $7,000 budget that was Robert Rodriguez's El Mariachi, and that made $2 million at the box office. And that whole trilogy of films, I really want to see. I've never gotten around to them. Like the early Robert Rodriguez films, I've heard are absolutely fantastic. Now, at a runtime of only 77 minutes, the film was written, produced, edited, scored, starring, and also featured both sound and production design by the director Shane Carruth, who, get this, had never done any of that. Nevertheless, it has a rating of 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd and 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. And of that $7,000 budget, the majority of it was actually spent on 16mm film stock. To save as much money as possible, most of the shots we see in the final film are the only takes that were actually shot, and the director has stated that there's no deleted scenes. The screenplay took 1 year to complete, and then the film shot for only 1 month, but spent 2 years in post-production due to editing problems, and Carruth claims that he actually quit working on the film at least 4 times during that post-production. Funnily enough, Rian Johnson, who made another time travel movie, Looper, said in his director's commentary that this, Primer, is the best time travel movie that's ever been made, and that when he sent his script to this director that he's actually friends with, Carruth's feedback was that Johnson's time travel was entirely wrong. In stunning Alabama fashion, Carruth also cast his own sister to play his on-screen wife, and I'll make no further comments on that choice. But following this film's success, he also started working on a follow-up called A Topiary that would have featured time travel and a couple of young boys creating artificial life. He abandoned the project when he realized that he was the only one taking it seriously, though. And if you felt dumb watching this, it's because you are. Director Shane Carruth is significantly smarter than you. You're significantly dumber than him. He's a software engineer, or a former software engineer, with a degree in mathematics, and he chose to not dumb down the technical terms for the audience. It makes for a fantastic film that pokes at your brain in ways Christopher Nolan could only dream of, baby. You got anything you want to add, Kay? Ooh. I've lost you. Don't have your microphone anymore. 1528. Bing, bing, bing. Sorry, just time coding that.
It was my own fault. My CPU was running really like a lot, and I tried quitting out of OBS.
You
Wrong
silly
move.
boy.
And so but nonetheless, no, I don't think that there's anything to add. It is brilliance in the sense of, I don't know, it just always inspires me when you hear about these films that people just took and made. Again, you and I discussed off mic, but us being obviously aspiring filmmakers and things like that, we were talking about the fact that, you know, this is like the budget was $7,000 because he did film stock. and we were like, yeah, we could probably make this for $1,000
Yeah.
if we just did
Like,
it on digital.
Yeah, if you think about
And
what the
it's,
actual props are for this, it's literally the box. That's it. And I could go to we could go to what do you call it? In
which
yours?
is
I got
duct
Bunnings
tape
Warehouse
and
here.
wires and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
You know, like most of the stuff these we shot in your house and we pulled your fridge out and pretended to break it, you know? Like, or we grabbed your microwave and put it in the garage. Like, yeah, it's very, very cool that they've like slapped this together the same way they slapped those boxes together. But before we dive in, do you want to do a bit of a spoiler alert for us, Kay?
Of course, absolutely. Before we go any further, all these conversations are not spoiler free. We're not necessarily doing a play-by-play, but we're talking about the film with the expectation that you have already seen it. It's always cool to go and watch the film and check back later. But even if you haven't seen the film, chances are we'll still convince you to make that leap. And if you want to know what film to watch in advance so you can come and prepare next week, links are in the description below for all our socials. So check us out there. And if you listen all the way to the end of the episode, we will also be revealing our next film.
And also next guest
right here.
Yeah.
You're correct.
And hopefully
Absolutely.
next week it's not Dave either. I mean, I love you, Dave, but I can only kind of take so much of you. You know, like you're like one of those friends that I love you, and sometimes you just kind of talk and give too much, and it kind of just wears me out emotionally. You know,
Dave, you can't be talking all this time. We have to get into the film.
Yeah, Dave. Come on.
Now,
so first thing I want to throw at you.
Fucking damn it, Dave.
God, fucking damn it, Dave. I have a question for you.
All right.
What was the single word used in this film that really locked in the time period in which it came out? You don't have to say the word, but do you know the word?
Oh, it was the absolute like casual drop of the F slur.
Yeah.
That was the absolute
My alarm telling me to wake up.
Understood.
But yeah,
wild. It was definitely the casual F slur drop that definitely dated this movie real quick.
And director Shane Carruth only has one other film that he's directed. I'm curious to watch that and see if it also shows up there. I think it's one of those weird things where obviously it's so casual and it's weird these days to hear that. And I mean, I hate getting caught up in that. It was a different time. Like, it obviously doesn't make things like okay, but like what do you do going back to something like this? Like, that's how people were. It's one of those weird.
It's one of those things where it's tough to avoid because it's like it's conversations we weren't having at the time. But it is one of those things where history is important to see how far we go. And, you know, it is insane that you can go back to one of these films and instantly see how dated it is. But if you look at that with the bright side, that just shows you how far we've come in certain areas. Hell, there are going to be tons of films that like were made in our lifetime. Like there's going to be tons of, you know, 2020 movies that in 80 years, people are going to look back and be like, ooh, they use this.
It's like language evolves.
And it's fascinating. It's all about learning and evolving, right? Like it's going, we didn't know at the time that was offensive to people, or maybe people did, but like it was just a casual way of referring to people. It's horrible. Like we shouldn't be doing it, but it is an interesting thing. But nonetheless, Neff, now if you had an interesting thing, we talked about this film midway through the week, and you said, you still with me, bud?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Your screen froze, but I don't know. Did my screen freeze?
But it's no, your screen's fine. I don't know what's going on with us today. This is Choco griefing us through the force. Let's turn camera
absolutely
off and then back on. Hello.
Is it?
I think I'm coming.
Like
back
I can still hear you fine.
Let me remove and back.
Sorry, guys. Today is a little bit of a technical issue, kind of a day.
Time code that for me, Kate. Give me 2 seconds.
I'm doing that right now.
I think we should be okay now. Boom, that's me. Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me okay?
There we are. Proud of you.
Hilarious.
I see you. I see you very
love.
I can see you. I can hear you. You're moving.
I'm glad. What were we talking about?
We were talking about I was gonna set you up to talk about the first watch versus second watch, so I'll set you up again.
Yeah, please go for it.
All right. Well, so Naf, you experienced this film in a very interesting way where you told me midway through the week that you at first watched this movie and you weren't entirely sold at the beginning. You kind of but you being the obviously wonderful creator that you are, plus also like the in general just how you choose to enjoy things is a lot of times once you don't like something once, you'll go back and watch it a second time just to see if that opinion changes. And that you did just that with this film.
Yeah. Well, like almost, because on my Letterboxd review for this, the first one that I wrote, I am deeply aware that I loved this and also that I didn't get it, is more kind of where it was. You know, it's like I liked so much about it, but by the time I finished the film, I was like, I feel dumb and I can't quite collect my thoughts entirely. I liked the vibe, I liked the tone, I liked the ideas, but kind of like, think of like when I left Tenet for the first time, I was like,
yeah,
I mean, I liked it, but I feel stupid. And I feel like maybe I'm not allowed to like it because I don't quite understand it. And then I went back and watched it again and I was like, oh, like this just makes no sense. Hilarious. And I think Primer actually does make a little bit more sense having watched it again, but it was a bit of an experience of I watched it. I did a lot of exploration and research into what it was kind of going for and trying to understand the use of all these different kind of like almost timelines that it's talking to. And then when I was watching the film again a second time, it actually made perfect sense to me, or as perfect as I think it could, you know? There's probably still some stuff that I missed, but it's a film that I think, because it's only 77 minutes, it was easy to watch again, and I'd happily watch it again now as well. It's quick, it's snappy, it's interesting, you know? Like I think I happily could watch this film a third time this week and still not be like tired of it. So yeah, I love that. But I'll talk to some of that stuff in a little bit as well. But for you, what was your experience like going and watching this film for the first time?
Well, yes, like as you said, I think that my reaction initially coming out of it was very much similar, where I appreciated how sophisticated this film was, and not in a way of like, oh my goodness, I appreciate the intricacy. It's like I like when a film takes its concept, believes in it, and it's one of those films that's like, I have no doubt that if I watch this all the way through, that if I like continue to watch this, it will continue making more sense. It's like, it's just so many words being thrown at you. And even in our day and age, when we have Nolan films left and right, or some of these other films, this film is still unique.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing I was walking away from it, where I was like, I still have not seen many films like this. Where again, it's very interesting when even like, I think it was kind of what the Russos and people like tried to do with Endgame, where it was like they almost took a scientific approach to time travel, like a actual, if you really think about it, it doesn't make any sense that this idea of like, oh, if you alter the past, there is no future. It's like, logically speaking, it is like, you're still aging, you're still going through this. It's like kind of like, it's more if you break down into like the actual like physics idea. And this film does it almost in a way of shout out to our first season. It does a very Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind kind of approach to this, where it's very nuts and bolts manila folders. Like it tries to be, and you can tell obviously with the budget, but at the same time, that was like part of the appeal of the film. Was these people, there was a legit practical purpose to how they were doing it, why they were doing it this way. Their boxes are made of PVC pipe, duct tape, and wires. Like it's not, oh, a cryopod that's, it's like literally the first time they show it off, it's just shoving this steel like box into this thing, pulling it out, pulling the stopwatch and being like, oh, we have like, you know, we did it. And I think that because of this, that's what helps with like the tone. And I would say that personally, I would like a second watch. I was joking with Naf that I watched literally like a couple of minutes before we started recording, was just trying to make sure I understood it. and I watched a like 6-minute video explaining with diagrams like the thing there. And what was interesting was I like on some level I understood what was happening, but I didn't trust myself that I was getting it. Where it's that thing of like, I think this is happening. I'm not exactly sure how, but I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Like if you asked me to explain it to you, I'm like, brother, like I got nothing.
But like, I think one of the things that really helped me really understand the film is when I got on call with Dave here. Dave had a fantastic explanation of this film. And Dave, I was wondering, do you want to like maybe fill us in a little bit on the kind of story structure here and why it works and how it works? Just give me that real quick. See what I mean? Like once he speaks, you just get it, you know? You just get it.
It's great.
He's fantastic.
It's great. Absolutely. I hope everybody else is picking up on what he's saying.
Like, yeah, literally. And I mean, if you don't understand Dave and the way Dave puts it, then like, I don't know how to help you with this, but
somebody in chat was saying that Dave's mic might not be working, but I don't think that that's a problem. I think that it's working fine.
I can hear him.
Like, I see the wave. I see the wavelength. It's fine.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. But yeah, it is wild, this film. Like you said, the amount of trust that it puts into the audience. Like I said, it's talking about some things that, you know, when they're talking about the concepts that they're working on at the start of the film, I have no idea what they're talking about there, you know, in terms of are you drinking tomato juice? What is happening there? What was that?
It's coffee.
Show me the
little droid.
I thought it was a little
mug.
I thought it was a can of tomato juice.
It's supposed to be looking like an oil can that you can purchase at any Disney store. It's from Galaxy's Edge, baby, all the way from Batuu.
Batua, no. But yeah, so the way that this film trusts you to know what's going on, it I think will and won't work for people sometimes. We talk about how what was it? It was the thing I sent you the other day. It was trust that your audience is intelligent enough to understand, and don't expect that they know how we got here. It was something like that.
Oh, I have it pulled up right here.
Please.
It's never underestimate your audience's intelligence and never overestimate their prior knowledge.
Exactly. And I think that this film is an interesting, what's the word? Study in that thought. Do you think that it like achieves that well?
See, that was, you and I were talking about this off mic. This film is an interesting experiment in that, because often I agree with you, Neff, where it is that put your trust in the audience. Some of our favorite stuff is when an audience trusts. Like, again, you and I, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, they talk about that all the time, is they didn't want to be the show that you made a sandwich during. They wanted everything to matter. They wanted you to be paying attention to every nook, cranny, and detail.
That's it.
And often it is a scary thing as creators, because it's like you're trusting, but you're also worrying that you're not explaining enough.
Mm-hmm.
This is a film that I think, and this is why when it goes to tone, right? And trusting this audience, you and I talked about it off mic, where I think this is a film that you could argue it trusts the audience too much.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a thing of, this guy did study this shit. It is that kind of thing of like, you do see this. And I think about it, like, because I was telling you off mic where I was saying that I believe that there was a part of this film that, like, Nolan films are very much a similar vibe, right? Like Nolan being fascinated with physics, fascinated with a lot of this stuff there. He tries to apply a lot of those concepts into his movie. And you brought up Tenet earlier. I think Tenet's a great example of this, where it's like, I have no doubt that you have worked out a convoluted, like, legit scientific way this actually works.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that the physics that you're talking about actually theoretically could work. However, the way you have presented it to me in this movie does not necessarily work for me, because me as an audience member, I am trying to process the details of what you're saying. And then you put in a line like, oh, you need to feel it. And it's like, okay, but then you keep trying to explain it to me. I don't get that. This film is never explaining it to you. It's always explaining it to the other characters who already know the language.
Yeah.
And it almost feels at times like you're trying to read subtitles Like you're trying, like it almost feels like
Yeah.
I am trying to translate this into dumb. I am trying to translate this film into words I can understand. But this film really hit its stride for me. It was the first time you see his double. Like the I'm blanking on which character it was. I think it was Abe's.
So
Abe's
you're talking
double.
about at the start, you've got him going, if you just follow me, I'm going to show you this. And he goes through all the steps and you'd be like, what are you getting at? Like, what do you mean this mold
Yeah, it's like
growing?
this entire movie is like talking about this, like the mold is growing, this and that.
For me, I think to your point, the pin dropped for me in this movie. I think at the exact same moment. It's when he stands up and looks at him and goes, you are not being pranked right now. This is real. I love you. I wouldn't do that to you. The second he said that, I was like, and then it happened. And I was like,
it is that moment where I think the film basically just goes, boom, bitch, this is what we are. It's I have never seen like a better inciting incident than that moment.
I think
or like end of act 1, like there is no turning back.
So there is like we were talking before at Rian Johnson's film Looper, right? And Looper is one of my favorite films. I love it, but it's one of those films that is kind of shat on by the sci-fi community because it's like time travel rules. It's kind of like Endgame. It's kind of like don't ask, don't answer, you know? Like I think
don't think about it too hard.
When you watch the movie, for me, I've watched the movie a bunch of times and I never sat there going, this doesn't work. But if you try and make it feel real, you go walk into paradoxes and things that just it doesn't make sense, you know? And obviously Shane Carruth saw this and told Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson was like, nice, thank you. And moved on. But there's a moment in there which I love, that kind of reminds me of this. And it's also the same moment where the pin dropped in Looper for me. And I won't spoil it too much because I want you to watch the movie. But essentially, there's a character who is meant to kill his future self, and his future self runs away. And then to try and catch the future self, they catch the younger self and start doing things to him to affect the
I've heard about this
version.
scene.
Yeah. And the way that it's shot is incredible. They used a specific performer that had a specific disability to like film and make these things look and feel real, and it's all shot in camera. It's mental. But I remember seeing that scene and going like, hold on, whoa, that's what we're doing here. And I love that. You know, it's committed to itself. And I think, like we were talking about Endgame. Endgame does that well as well. It doesn't really care. It's just like, guys, just shut up and let's just go for a ride. Yeah.
Yeah, but what this film I think does to that extent of like taking those examples, and I think that why people can consider this one of, if not the best, like time travel films of all time, is the fact that this movie doubles down on the paradox element, and it's having people like, the point of this film is almost discussing the idea of time travel. That's the point. The point isn't, oh, I'm going to go back in time so I can punch my boss. Like, that's not the point of the film. The point isn't even that they're making money. Like, the point, like, it's interesting because this film almost has no goal. Like, there's no discernible, like, oh, we need to make X amount of money in order to fund our actual research, and stuff is getting in the way. This is almost a slice of life sci-fi film.
Yeah, it is, right?
In a weird way, where it's like it is an examination of time travel and what that does to these two friends.
One of the videos that I watched that was explaining the film was actually called The Ethics of Time Travel. And if you guys want to know a little bit more about the film, like check out that video as well. It's really
That's
cool.
a great way of putting it.
And it was one of the things that I was thinking of here, you know, like, and we'll get to like the realistic sense of it as well. But the film uses a lot of narration to tell its story. And again, for first-time editor Shane Carruth, one, shooting on film, and then converting that to digital on your own, and then editing it. He obviously had a lot of issues in the edit. That's what caused the kind of follow-up. And I can see in chat, Died in the Forces here, and it looks like Choco is being summoned. And I'm not sure if maybe we need to focus really, really hard and see if he's going to show up. But thank you. And yeah, like it's one of those things that yeah, it looks like he's on his way, so we might get him for a couple of minutes, which is great. But
absolutely,
yeah, it works on so many levels, like we said, and it's one of those films that just like yeah, it kind of knows what it's going for. You know, it sticks with it.
Absolutely. Like, and as you said, it's like it knows what it's doing. It knows what it wants to be. And that's the thing that I find very affecting about the movie. And I think why it works. And if we go into the tone of the film, and as you were kind of going with the narrative structure as well,
Yeah.
one of the things that I find particularly interesting of this movie is, as you said, it's the narration, all this stuff. It's this film tells you this tone. It's like, I mean, the very beginning, they're talking about stuff that I don't know if on rewatch you felt that it did explain, but it is one of those things that I felt at the very least it didn't how do I put it? It didn't bother explaining anything at the beginning. So it's kind of just setting you up with stuff that ultimately doesn't matter. It's just showing you timing and things like that.
I'm curious when they were kind of setting it up at the start. Where did you think it was going?
There we go.
Do we hold on?
You did it.
Let me just focus really hard.
Hold on.
Oh, there, we got him. He's there. He looks frozen, but
there we are.
And what is it frozen?
It is frozen.
It is frozen, but we're working through this.
So
yeah.
So we've been talking, and obviously you can like listen to some of the first thoughts, but to kind of go over, we both were talking about how it's wonderful to see a film that trusts its audience, even at times almost too much, where it's a film that's so self-assured in what it is that it's like, fuck you, you figure it out. In the best of ways, like where it is just, it knows what it wants to do, it tries to do it. And as Naf was even bringing up a video that he watched about it, which was like bringing up the ethics of time travel and the idea of like, what are you obligated to, what are the rules, and almost how time travel kind of corrupts anyone, because it almost is just too much power that it immediately causes everybody to deal with this in that way. And I found it to be fascinating. So one thing that we asked our sorry, absolutely. Well, no, I was going to ask you. We asked our audio engineer, Dave, aka the video screen that tends to occupy places when in the format. But question for you: what really, like, why, out of all the movies, why choose this one? What does it mean to you? What's the vibe with it? Tell us a bit about how you feel with it.
This movie is like, for me, it's inspirational, right? It's this guy who, with a budget of $7,000, dinged the film industry. You know what I mean? Like, this movie took $7,000 to make this whole film.
We were talking about it in our fun facts because it brought back nearly $1 million in return. It was $841,000 at the box office that it made on $7,000. And it goes to show
it's still a cult classic.
Yeah, it's insane. It reminded me of another film. Have you seen Brick, Choco?
I actually have not seen Brick.
So,
I know I'm supposed to.
Brick is Rian Johnson's version of this. It's
so don't worry about that.
Straight out of high school, like a 16-year-old Joseph Gordon-Levitt. They're filming on a potato. It was edited on his little MacBook day to day over a year. Like it's his version of this. And if you love this for that reason, I reckon you'd love Brick as well. It's a fantastic film.
Okay.
But to that point,
this is like the heart of like, this to me feels like a story that had to come out of someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like they just,
No, you're absolutely right.
You're so right.
It's and like, we were saying that it took him a year to put the screenplay together, and then they filmed for like a month, and then he stayed in post-production for like 2 years afterwards because he didn't know how to edit, and he's the editor on this film. He did everything for this. And he nearly quit it like 4 times. He was sitting there going, nah, fuck this, it's not worth it. But he stuck through, and as he said, it shows. It came through really, really well.
And that is even like to your point, Naf, and guys, like what we were talking about, as you're saying, inspirational, Choco. It's like, how many times do you think that people do this kind of stuff where it's like, sure, and this shouldn't be the rule of thumb for everybody, but it is insane because you got to know that he was saying, oh, what do I know? What words do I have to say in the film industry? What could possibly that I have to say be this? Like, there's a reason that you quit almost that many times while you're making it, because you've got to put so much effort into it, especially when you don't have a ton of other people involved in the process.
Yeah.
It's like you got to kind of just be like, I don't know, man. I guess it works. I guess it's fine. And then, but what I love about what this film does is it's like, but people did love it. People did listen.
Mm.
And it's still, Naf and I mentioned earlier, it's still unique. Like, watching this film, I'm like, I could not tell you a single film made today that really touches what this film is doing. Like, with the amount of commitment that this film does.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating to me. And again, you even think about like the original, like Terminator and this stuff there. It's just, what we said earlier was a genius doesn't have to have a big budget.
Yeah.
It's just about telling a genuine good story. And it comes down to the writing. It comes down to that, like, of having a solid script when you go into something. As Nav said in his fun facts, some of these shots were like the only takes they did because they were filming on film, so they could not waste it. So it's like, guys, we got the one shot, we got the one take, like, we gotta fucking get it.
And no deleted scenes. But I like how it presents. So one of my favorite things about the film is when we show up at the start, we kind of have an idea of who, like, the protagonist is. You know, like, we've got Abe and we've got Adam and Abe, yeah. And one of the fun things as well, I don't know if you picked up on this, Keegan, but I learned this in the fun facts on IMDb. But Abe's surname is Turger, and if you flip that around, it's regret.
Oh,
interesting. Yeah. All right, okay.
Regret their decision.
That's better. That's better than the one of the things that made my eye roll when I heard about Interstellar, which was that the Matt Damon's character is named Dr. Mann, but you want to know what his first name is? Hugh. His name is Hugh Mann.
That's a placeholder name that you're supposed to take out.
That's exactly. I'm like, that's a placeholder name that made it into Final Cut, and I'm like so mad.
They did not think that's true.
My name is John Everyman.
I'm Jedi. I'm gonna die. And then
so there's that. But I love that when we basically start this film halfway through the story, and we don't realize it until you go back and watch it again, and you go, "Oh, the person who's telling the story is the original Adam, and the first Adam that we see is actually like Adam 2. He's already actually lived all of this." And it was watching it through the second time, seeing all the times that he's got the earpiece in.
He's got a little head.
And I was thinking,
changes the whole movie.
Yeah, like, I'm not sure about your thoughts on it, Choco, but there are some scenes in which Adam has the headphones in, and there's other scenes where he doesn't. And I was wondering, do you think that the ones where he's got it in is repeated version, and the ones where he doesn't is like current version? So we're kind of swapping between two timelines.
I didn't get that. What I kind of got from it was that there were certain things, because there's one part that the movie doesn't really tell you, and there was the happening that happened in regards to the party with which it's accosted, and that was on Adam to make right, and so the wording doesn't. I mean, so we have the voiceover. But the voiceover is from a different Adam that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so we don't know how many times it took in order to get that whole thing right.
And he mentions that as well. I know before you do continue, sorry.
Talking. Oh, go ahead.
Was just going to say, because I know that Kay's tight on time, and just wanted to throw to UK. What do you want to do?
Here's my thing. I'm gonna send you my cinema a la carte because I love this, and I would rather have the conversation with Brandon than do mine right off the bat. I'll send it to you so you can read it once you guys get to that point. Sure. But I'll just dip once I have to.
Okay.
But for now, I would love to just continue more so with Brandon and talking about the film rather than
easy. So you're still good for time for a couple of minutes.
Good for a time for about like 8 or so more minutes, and I would rather have this and like again enjoy hearing Brandon's thoughts on this, and then
sounds good.
I'll send you my cinema card. We can go for it later.
Cool.
But you continue, Brandon. You were saying.
Oh, I mean, with us not knowing exactly which time things were, for some
Yes.
of them, like the conversation while he's playing basketball, I kind of took that as he's done this a while and he can kind of jazz
Yeah.
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, yeah. It's
That's
like
how I took it.
I think it's also like because he asks kind of towards the end of the film, like I don't know how many times it would have taken him to get it right. But I think it's interesting that that even could have been like an intentional miss of like I wonder if I can make these little changes and it's sort of okay, you know. But yeah,
It
like
is interesting the more you watch the film how many of that how it opens up your mind, and
Mhm.
it's crazy because I think that again we come at this from so many different angles. I watched it the one time, Nav watched it twice,
Mhm.
you've watched it I don't know how many times,
How many times have you
and
seen
it's
it, Choco?
Probably good 4, maybe
Yeah,
5.
sweet.
yeah,
We're
and
saying,
this is a film that I think is very brilliant to be able to see the how different watches affect, and you can see kind of the layering. One thing was also with the editing that I thought was really cool was, and at first I was not quite sure what they were doing with it. At first it kind of was naff. You often talk about the Liam Neeson taken whatever when how many takes it makes it look like Liam Neeson is going over the fence,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and like you know it's just kind of like all these different shots to make it look like it was quick, but it's not.
yep.
And it's uh there were times where you would almost see the same thing happening. Like it was just a different angle. Like it was a little punched in, but you always saw him falling back, him
Mhm.
falling back, him falling back. And at first I was chalking it up to maybe, again, it's his first time editing, it's his thing there. But then I started to think they're doing it a lot. I
Mhm.
think that they're really trying to get at you with this of how many times they've done this
Yeah.
almost. It's like
I think
it
the
is like
first time you see it,
subconsciously.
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The first time you see it is like when Abe is waking up in his house, and it's like
Hmm.
they've started the machine because the way that I took it the first time I watched it is they started the machine and then it just cuts to him on the ground, and I was like, oh, did he like pass out? Like what happened? Like I'm not sure. I have no idea what
Oh,
happened.
yeah.
And then there's like a little thing beeping next to him, and he gets up, and he kind of gets up again. It's all over the place. He's disoriented, and I was like, did it like release some kind of chemical? Because again, I didn't even know this was a
Yeah.
time travel film. Like I just went in as blind as possible, and
Yeah.
I was figuring out. I thought that the direction that film was going to go is that they were going to create this kind of technology that like somebody else wanted, and they would like try and take them. You know, like a very what's the word?
Mhm.
Like a Silicon Valley takeover kind of thing is where I thought it was going to go. But yeah, it is really interesting those editing choices because you also get that um when I think Adam comes out of the machine and his ear is bleeding and you're kind of swapping side to side and around and it's real disorienting the move between all those different shots, but it works.
It works.
Now, I have a question. Do you guys think well, what did you think when all of a sudden, Rachel's dad, Mr. uh
Ooh.
Granger.
Sturgis Rayner, yeah. When he comes back in time and you're like, what? Like what went through your mind at that part?
Yeah, I saw
Oh,
that.
oh, oh,
Go ahead, Kay.
yeah. Mine was going, oh, did multiple people get this shit? Like it was a moment of like the movie almost opens up, right? Like that was kind of like Naf and I talked about like these pin drop moments that this movie has, where it's like the first one is when you see Abe's double for the first time.
Mm.
It's like this movie is sort of going we were talking earlier about how this film almost acts like a foreign film where it's like because of all the scientific jargon you're like you're not quite sure you're picking up everything, you're kind of
Yeah.
trying to make sure you're doing this stuff, but then you see it and it's like, oh shit, okay, I get what this, I don't quite understand it but I get it, and it's like I see it, I know what's happening. And then with the dad, that was a moment that was like, oh, it started to get to the unreliable narrator
Mm.
aspect of this thing of like, oh my god, we've been told one thing about this, but is what we've been told wrong? Is what we've been told not real? And it just started like that was when my brain started to feel like I started to go into a Charlie Day, It's Always Sunny, trying to look at the board, trying to be like, well, if this means this, then this means that. And then just but Nav, what about you? How'd you feel?
Yeah, it was one of those things that they don't really explain it anymore either, right? Like they never go into any more depth about it. They just as is move on. And he's catatonic, and we don't
Yeah.
understand why. And I love the conversation between Adam and Abe there, where Adam's saying to Abe, like, you can't even get close to him without like freaking out. So like, this is like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? But I wonder what it was that caused him to, like basically try. You know, like what was he doing? Was he watching them? Like he was meant to be an investor, right? So he's probably looking at how much money he can make off of this. But it's shocking to me that he would have just gone in and just tried it.
Oh,
yeah,
and I want to hear your theory.
My theory is so Rachel's ex-boyfriend shows up and he has a shotgun and he threatens, but in every permutation, he doesn't shoot. Right? Is what they said. I think the first time he did.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think the first time we're watching it, I think when we're watching it, I think the failsafe has already been used. You know, the very end of the I'm suggesting that the circular chunk that we're in is already not the first circular chunk, not just that he had gone back before. So at the very end of the film, we have one of the atoms and he's like making a big giant one somewhere in France, right? Where did he get the funds for that? I'm thinking that there was a first time. I'm thinking Rachel died and he promised he could bring her back, and that's how he got funding, and that's why. And then for her father, it was only 3 days, right? That's why he's all broken and disheveled. But he's like, I have to see it. I have to be able to see it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if their deal was for him to be drugged or something like that, and that's why he ends up comatose and dying, so that there's not two of him running around on the same timeline.
Yeah.
I
like an intentional.
I will make this deal with. Yeah, I'll make this deal with you.
That does make sense too, because it would have been made with. Yeah, it would have been made with Adam 1, and then when Adam 1 came back the second time, he got overpowered by like Adam 2. Or other way around. I think it was Adam 3 that he just convinces to go. And so it's like that could have been him that did it, and then he's not there anymore, and so he doesn't know why Granger is there when he kind of should.
It's the same thing that they kind of talk about. Like that makes perfect sense, Choco, to me, because it also is like they talk about like the cell phone thing. It's like there is stuff that does get changed because of how it goes.
Yeah.
And to me, it is that thing that I think is really interesting, because again, this is all theory that you have, that this idea there. What I love about this movie is that it opens up that discussion, right? Like that's not really a part of the movie, but it also is. Like the Rainer thing is never fully tied up in a bow and tell you what happened. It's because these characters don't quite know what happened.
Yeah.
You know, and it's but like I think that you're right. Like it makes a lot of sense if that kind of triggered this to some degree, and it's kind of like them all going back, and it's like the fail safes upon fail safes, and it's, I don't know, it's really interesting to me seeing that, and like the idea of like the freshly shaven versus the stubble, and it makes sense.
The
that
only person who can benefit from time travel is whoever has it first in the timeline.
It is that insane thing, right? Like that's the thing, like that I always think is crazy. It is what makes time travel interesting, right? Like within film, I think it's why we still use the trope, because it automatically opens up all these questions, and I think this movie handles them very interestingly, because it is that idea of like it starts off as an experiment, but then one person's like, okay, but what if this all goes to shit? I need to have like a backup plan to sort of make sure that we don't do it. But causing that backup plan caused all like that thing of distrust.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it kind of makes one person feel like they're a god a little bit. Like Nap and I, there's a campaign that I run in my home game, and Nap and I came up with these characters called Wayfarers, where that was a huge thing, where it's like these people that can see across time. But it's like, these are just guys who just get this power. because they just end up going down the right path. They're not special for any other reason than they just discovered it first. But because of that, depending on the personality you go into it with, that affects everything.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's and it is sort of that vibe with this, where it's like these two people who presumably were friends, all of a sudden
Yeah.
it's like they turn into rivals of one another when they realize, oh, you don't trust me enough
Mhm.
that you built a failsafe.
Yeah.
So you wanted to have control over the narrative. You didn't trust me. Well, fuck you. I'm gonna also have that.
And I think that's interesting too, that like the first time that Abe's shown it to Adam, he's seen on the register that there's two like rooms that they've got, right? And so from there, he's basically gone straight into I'm gonna go check out what's in there. And he finds a failsafe, and it's like, box within a box to go back even further, and like it's a mental.
Yeah. And it's brilliant. Again, this movie made for $7,000, won Sundance. Like it's genius. And
Yeah.
I think that it's
Genius on a budget.
a genius on a budget.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's amazing to me. And I like even the cinematography, just to touch on that real quickly. It's very well shot. Like each shot is very well composed. There's a lot of like really cool stuff. Like even them just talking in a hallway. It's like you have the greater hallway and then they're at the end. It's like they just know how to do enough with the limited stuff that they have. That I remember I went to a couple film festivals, side tangent, for a couple films of mine. And I remember there would be times where I would see films that were like shot on red or shot on these things there. And I'm like, I'm so sorry that you spent that amount of money, because it doesn't look like it was made on red. Where I'm like, you paid how much money for your film to look like it was shot on a potato because you didn't know quite how to use it. It's like they used like the hallway, the geometry of everything. Even shots that I thought were really cool because it kind of hinted at everything that was to come, was they had a lot of shots where something was in between the two characters.
Yeah.
Where like there was like, whether it was, they're working at a desk and the computer's in between them, or this is that, where it's like
in between them, and
like subtly splitting the two, where it's like it's trying to get you to feel like these people aren't as close as we think they are.
Yeah. And which moment I loved as well is did you call the pest control for the rats in the roof? They're not rats. I was like, he said it the first time and I was like, and then when it gets the reveal, I was like, okay, cool. But I do love where it kind of like
that's
ends.
another me up there.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen when he comes down, but like that's a problem for future.
I do love how they said it, that like the first night that he told him about the time travel and everything is the night that he stopped the shooter at the party. And from there it's like, I think to your point, Choco, he's very much like I think it's happened the first time, like we lose the person, and he goes back in time straight away, fixes it, or goes back as many times as he needs to fix it, and then obviously the next day goes through it with Abe, and that's how we kind of go from there. But by the end of the film, we come right back to the start. We see that happen, and then they're going, our people are going to wake up and they're going to get in the box, and there's 3 Abes in the world at this point, and 3 Adams in the world and 2 Abes, and leftover Abe is just like, I'm just going to sit here and like fuck with it until they give up. Like I'm just going to tear it apart and break stuff when they're not looking and blah, blah. And it's kind of it's like to Kay's point earlier, he said that like, it's kind of just like a day in the life of it. It doesn't really have a story, the film. And the fact that it kind of ends, also not doesn't have a story, because it has a story obviously, but doesn't have like there isn't any specific outcome they're trying to achieve. They're just time
there's
travel.
no traditional goal.
Yeah. And so by the end of the film,
and then even as you're watching it, like even the time travel, all they actually do is play the market like twice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And they talk about doing something bigger, but they never really like do. And at the end, they go back in time to the start where nothing happened, and it's basically like we got to go back to not having changed anything and let it go as is. And the only thing we changed was letting this one person live. Which, yeah. But I think that you are right that like if she died the first time, that makes sense why her dad goes back in time potentially with Adam and then just kind of stayed out there. We don't know.
Yeah, and then it's well, again, I loved what you were saying because it makes so much sense of like, okay, because like Adam 1 seems to be probably like the most pure out of all of them, and it's almost like every subsequent double is like gets more corrupted almost as it goes along.
It's like he's further removed
like,
from this isn't my family,
Adam
it's his
1,
family.
Because like Adam 1 is like trying to keep an eye. I like to go off of your theory, Choco. Like it's kind of like he's trying to keep an eye on the situation. He's trying to do it, but then all of a sudden, another one of him, like fucking drugs him, puts him in like the attic, and he's like, "Shit, man, I was trying to work on this thing. Like what? No, like what happened? Like it's just like." How did things go so wrong? And it's like you got to know there's a comedy from the first Adam's point of view. If we just followed that completely linearly, there's a comedy of him just getting drugged, put in the attic, waking up, just being like, oh, "Hey guys, let me out of here! What the fuck happened?"
But that's kind of the scary thing about time travel. Is like if it did exist, then and they directly say this in it. But they're like, how do you know if you weren't supposed to do something?
Yeah.
Or if you weren't, like, is this version the real version of events? Or, and if this is not the real version of events, this is the one chosen by this person. Does that make that person a god? Am I just, like a subjective piece of that person's objective reality at this point?
Yeah.
Precisely.
It's interesting.
It's super interesting to think about, and it's super interesting to like kind of process. And again, why I'm so glad you brought this movie. Now you guys continue. I gotta go and scare people. So I'm gonna let you guys go. Naf has my cinema a la carte, but Choco, it's so great talking with you. Hope we get a chance to talk longer at some other point. But great movie. I very much loved it, and it was finally nice to finally check this movie off of my list. I feel like I can actually go around and feel like I still have my sci-fi nerd card, and feel like I finally like deserve this this high honor. But continue, guys. Thank you for the wonderful discussion. I'll see you all.
See you later, Kay.
All right.
Sorry, I saw.
Oh, you're all good. Do not worry about it, Choco, at all. I am sorry. I have to dip early. Totally good. Totally good with everything there. Do not apologize. Do not feel bad in any way, shape, or form. Simple mistakes. Like, very happy that we had you on at all to begin with. So very excited to have this. Wish I could stay longer, frankly.
We'll see you soon, Kay.
Absolutely. See you then.
Bye. It's funny. I was putting together my second Letterboxd review for this because I watched it twice. And I found a poster. And the poster just makes so much sense, like you see it, and I was like, it's
so good.
It clicks now, But yeah, I watched the film for the first time. I finished it, and I was like, I love it, but I don't get it, and I feel like, does that make me stupid for loving it? And so I kind of sat with it for a minute. I was like, okay, let's just see, and then I ended up going back and watching it again.
It's not gettable. That's There are elements on there where we will not have a solid answer ever.
Yeah. It's like it's got its own rules, right? And we only know what the characters kind of know and what the characters want to tell us, which is I think another part of the film, right? It's a bit of a mystery and a bit of a thriller. But I was telling Kay how like the moment where it really like the pin dropped for me is we've got Abe showing up to Adam and telling him, "Hey, follow me. I'm going to show you this and this and this and this and this." And I'm like, I don't understand. What's the deal with like fungus? Are they going to create like a hypervirus that's going to like wipe out the world? Like, I don't know. And then it started going like, it takes this long. And I was like, oh, okay. But it's the moment where they're sitting there drinking the beer on the tail of the truck. And Abe stands up and looks at Adam and goes, "You're not being pranked. I wouldn't do that to you. I love you. I just need you to know that, okay? You're not being pranked." And they look and it's like, oh, it's him. And I think that moment was really interesting because when you look at Adam the second time watching it through, his reaction is like it looks like he's acting, and I can't tell if that's intentional or not, but he doesn't look.
He's acting as an actor, or if he's the character acting.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember watching so the second time through as well, where he says that joke of like, "Where are we going? Where do they send engineers when they turn 40?" And then you go back and the guy says it later, and I was like, I don't understand. Is that an ongoing joke that this guy always says this, or has he heard it before and he's making a joke? to kind of like tease the fact that he's been here before. Because in the end, obviously, he goes and asks the guy the question. He's like, "What? How did you end up here?" It's like, "Well, where do engineers go when they turn 40? To take him out the back and shoot him." It's like, oh, you cheeky son of a bitch. But it does something very
Well,
similar to.
you know,
Go ahead.
I mean, I didn't think of that as being like a intentional thing, and of course, it's just my reading. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but my reading of it was like it's a joke that he heard that sparked in his brain, and so he just said it, and like, and to me, it goes to show that um you can't be the same person you were the first time. There's
Mm,
no way. Like, I think that sparks the reason why you have to straight record the whole conversation,
yeah.
and even then, it's not going to be the same. You know,
Mm,
we had him make the shot, and the person responded one way, and then
yep.
he
And then he
missed the shot,
missed.
he responded a different way,
Yeah. And you got the
and
coal that goes to him one time and then
yeah,
goes to him again the second time when they're coming back through. And it's like the version of you that's sitting in there waiting didn't get the coal this time. So we've changed something.
yeah,
It's insane. But like I think that scene in particular, after the guy makes that joke, the way he looks at Abe made me think like he trying to tell him like what's happening here? And like you said, I think it's all like it's interesting. It's all open to interpretation as well. So people take different reads on it, but yeah, like in the end, I kind of ended up sitting in this thought that I was like, I feel like we're seeing a linear story, but it's showing us chunks of like timeline 1 and then chunks of timeline 2 and then chunks of timeline 3 and kind of jumping between them in a trying to keep it
mm-hmm.
like narratively like
Keep it
linear.
time wise,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Because the whole thing is 1 week. It's a business week. It's
yeah,
like it's 5
exactly.
days.
He called in sick to travel in time and get some money on some stocks, and yeah, it's wild. It's an awesome film. And I was telling Kay, I was like, I feel like also having watched it twice, it's another one that I'm like, I could watch it again this week and not be bored by it still. And I love that it's just quick. Like last night, I was like, oh, I should watch it one more time before the podcast. Before I go to bed, I put it on an hour later. I was in bed, so it's perfect for that. And
I
absolutely, I think
miss that
required.
about old movies is
Oh,
they put
dude.
everything. Old movies are like an hour and 20 minutes,
Mm,
like maximum, and
yeah,
everything is in there is what needs to be in there,
yeah,
and nothing else.
yeah. Exactly right. It's perfect in that sense, and it's one of those things that nowadays, when you're trying to go to the movies and watch something, like it's obviously it's expensive these days. Like cinemas aren't everywhere; a bunch have closed down, so it takes like a drive often for people to go and then watch a 2 hour film and trailers and all of that, and it can be it's taking a big chunk out of your day to go and watch a movie that's long at the cinemas. So like having
Yeah,
as Tate Facts Guy puts it, a tight 90 is one of my favorite things lately. And it's made it a lot easier to go and watch lots of films back to back to back to back, particularly at the cinemas because it's a big thing for me. But like if I want to go to IMAX to watch something, IMAX is an hour away from me, up and back. And if I go to work and then go to IMAX and then drive home, I'm not home till like 1 o'clock in the morning. Work till 5, movie 6 or 7, 3 hours ish there, and then drive an hour home. It's like it's a big chunk. So yeah,
yeah.
I also miss that about old films. But
Um,
I wonder as well, like are there any other things specifically that stick out to you that you want to like talk about with regards to this film?
uh, I think. Well, it's actually more of a question I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, since you spend more time dissecting film than I do. So this film, because I think the writing on it was incredible. I think it was really well written. And being someone in the Star Wars fandom, I hear writing thrown around by people who have zero idea what they're talking about. But I just gotta ask, the the development was just two characters. Um, we don't know much about anyone else, about their friends or family or anyone else in the world. Uh, like the time travel aspect of it was not the main story, right? Because all they truly did is they went back a few times and played the market
Mm,
and played games in a hotel room, right? Um, but it still tells a story, and I don't. Those two ideas don't match up for me, because I'm
mhm.
like, it was well written, but what did they write?
Yeah. It's a bit like I feel like one of the things that they do really well is that by keeping one of the characters like out of the loop, they get to explain it to that character who is by proxy us. And in that sense, that decision is really, really clever, which makes the writing really good, right? But it's like we were saying before, since there's no like actual like goal that they're trying to achieve, and they're just kind of doing their thing and going, well, what could we do? We could do this, we could do that, make our lives a little bit better, blah, blah, and then just kind of like move on. You know, if I do really well, then I'll tell my wife that I time traveled to do this. But it's, yeah, like I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with structuring your film that way. Like sometimes there are just those, and I think it's much more common with like the indie type films, because you put a studio exec on this, he would have been like, nope, it requires this and this and this and this, and kind of just giving the freedom to just go do whatever you want, and you'll find people. It's like James Cameron said one time. It's like there was a studio exec that gave him a note on Avatar of like a thing like, you know, why this scene? Why do you need this? He's like, I want to see it. That's all. And if I want to see it, that means somebody wants to see it, which means it deserves to be made. And obviously James Cameron can tell a studio to fuck off, but Shane Carruth wouldn't have been able to. You know, it would have been do it this way, and it would have been compromised, and he wouldn't have got to tell the story he wanted to.
And that's another thing. This is a film that I don't believe could have been made with a studio.
Yeah, you're right. And I think it's one of those that I'm surprised he hasn't made more films. He's only got one more on there, which I've got on my list now to watch. I'm interested to see what he kind of did next. But he's not done anything since. It's just 2 films. The last one was in 2013. Maybe he got tired of doing everything, you know. So he said he had no experience on any of these. He did the score. I did just notice that the sound editing was done by him and one other person, and the person who helped with the sound editing was David Ho, and the only other film that he's done sound for is Mulholland Drive by David Fincher in 2001. So, sorry, David Lynch in 2001.
Yeah,
which I was like, that's interesting because that's a huge movie, and then he's just done sound on this, and then nothing else. So it's wild that like one, how'd you get that guy? And also you've got the actor that he's picked for Abe, never acted before. And for himself, he hadn't acted either. He just couldn't find the right person to play Adam, so he's like, all right, I'll do it. Which is the way of most short film
Adam
creators.
Adam is a very complex character in this film, so that does make sense.
Yeah.
He had to be both a goody two-shoes, but also someone that easily develops a god complex and falls to the dark side, so to speak.
Yeah. It's
no,
I haven't seen this film in particular, but I know that happens in Chronicle. And I've always wanted to watch that. Josh Trank's first film. And you know, before he went and did Fan Four Stick.
Chronicle.
Yeah. I'm waiting. I think I actually put a post up a while ago going, is this anyone's favorite film? Because I want to watch it for like the podcast. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Like wanting to see that obviously because I haven't seen it. And most of these little things that people are able to throw together like this and Brick, and going back and watching a lot of big time directors like first films is always interesting. There was one we did a few weeks ago called Upgrade. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I've not seen it.
So pop that on your list. 2017 came out the same year as Venom, and it was shot and filmed in Australia and by an Australian director, the same guy who did The Invisible Man. So he made Upgrade on like, I think it was like 15 million or something, and it did pretty well, like 300 or 400 million. And then he made The Invisible Man also on a small budget, and that blew up and it went off. And Upgrade, I would recommend don't watch a trailer or anything for it. Just find it on Netflix one night, put it on and watch. Like, I guarantee you'll have a good time.
Logan Marshall Green in there.
Yep.
Or
the Shocker.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny that you mentioned him alongside Venom because he's like the discount version.
Yeah, so that's a wild thing. Venom came out first, and then a trailer for Upgrade came out. And I'd be interested to know your thoughts on the similarities between like the story, the fact that like they are similar and they look similar. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
We have Tom Hardy at home.
Literally.
Like, okay.
Yeah, but in this case, the Tom Hardy was better. So like, I think I actually titled the name of the episode something like the best Venom film from 2017 that you'd never seen. You know, like Yeah, but
No, I'll definitely have to check that out.
yeah, it
And
is.
then one last thing
Go.
I wanted to mention about the film that I really thought that a lot of films currently don't quite hit
Mm,
is how natural their conversations were with each other,
yeah.
right? Because when they would speak, they didn't speak in a way that was like overly expository
Hmm.
ever, and it's because it's only them. They obviously know the context,
Yeah.
you know. There was a period where like I got their names mixed up, and I was like, wait, I'm sure he'll say it,
Mm,
and he doesn't, and it's because they're friends. They've known each other forever. They
mm,
don't use each other's name all the time when they're talking,
yeah.
unless they have to punctuate it with something.
Like it does come across
Um,
so like naturally, and then you've also got those scenes where like they're at the barbecue and you've got all these conversations flowing over one another, like two conversations happening at the same time. It's very like natural. It's real. It's
yeah,
human. And
and I just don't ever see that. It's always
it's funny you say that. Last night I put on the movie Real Steel by Sean Levy, and
Mhm.
the script in particular is I wrote atrocious, and it's it does
We're here
that
in the future with fighting with robots very
literally. Like
naturally.
there's so much exposition. There's one part where it's got Evangeline Lilly in it, and she's talking to Hugh Jackman's character, and his name is Charlie, and she's like, "And Charlie, you've always been like this, Charlie. So Charlie, you have to stop being like this, Charlie. Charlie, you have to change, Charlie." And I was like, "What is going on here?" Like it's because it's wild. Yeah, it's like that. It's like for example, once we're on this podcast, unless I'm like directing over to you and I'm going, "Oh, Choco, what are your thoughts on this?" So I'm asking you. We just talk. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is something about that and there's this kind of phenomena I've talked to Keegan about where there's like an uncanny valley of dialogue where sometimes as far removed as you are from how we talk in real life, it can feel somewhat like natural because it's just written well. It's like, for example, Andor, brilliant writing, but like it's also not necessarily how you would have conversations. But it's very, very tight, and we say our ums and our likes and our ahs and all of this. It's just not there. So that's good writing, but it's not like real. And then you have this kind
Yeah.
of almost a parabola, if you will, of uncanny valley where as you get closer to how real we are, it feels fake and it feels faker and faker and faker. And then when you get to the very like real sense, it's like this, where there are these moments where you're like, is this like bad acting? And it's like, it's kind of not though. It's like, this is how we speak. And then you kind of, as you dial up even further and further and further and get into like the wackiness of it, it becomes it feels even more real. Like there was another film I referred to, Rye Lane, which is on Disney Plus, and you can watch it for free. But these characters are kind of like in this heightened sense of reality. Like they're very like over the top and like, what do you mean? That's so weird. I don't act like that. But it then kind of even feels more real, even though it's more fake. So it's like this weird paradox that I always find really interesting. Boom, boom.
Rye Lane found it.
Rye Lane, baby. That's a good one. That was one of my favorites of, I think, 2022 is when it came out, 2023. But yeah, like it's epic and yeah, it was a great movie choice, dude. But yeah, I'm really interested to
I'm happy
hear.
you guys enjoyed it. Whenever I like really like something, I'm always like, I'm always certain I'm the only person that's gonna enjoy it.
I do the same sort of thing. I feel like I tie a little bit of my own personal value to the product, and if I share it with someone and like, I don't like this, I'm like, you don't like me? What? But no, we like you and we like this movie a lot. Yeah. And I'm wondering, were you able to get your cinema a la carte like ready to go? Because I've got mine. I'd be really interested to hear yours as well.
So I had some trouble with this. Well, some
let me do the intro for it a little bit.
Cinema a la carte was like, okay, for people who enjoyed this film, here's another one-off that you should check out.
Yeah.
Is that
pretty much? Yeah. Like, well, so I'll do a little intro for cinema a la carte, and we'll go into. I'll show you mine, and then you can kind of flow off of that. But we always love to wrap up with a game of cinema a la carte, and so for a reminder to listeners, this is where we get to show you the best way to experience this film through the metaphor of food. So we prepare a menu of our own, with this week's film as the main course, an entree to start, a wine to pair, and a dessert to complete your journey. And you guys get to decide in the comments which menu you love the most, right? Now, there isn't really specifics for what needs to go in which space. The way I kind of do it is if I think of like my appetizer, I'll go, what's something that's kind of similar, but maybe like not as deep? And then a wine would be something that's like, think Venom and Upgrade, like they're kind of side by side, And then for dessert, I go, it's got kind of the same vibe, but it's a little sweeter or it's a little sillier. It's a little like, they kind of tie in. But there isn't any specific criteria for what needs to go where. It's just basically, can you make 3 recommendations for people who might like this movie? And Keegan's one, he actually named his title Genius on a Budget. And for an appetizer, he's chosen the Blair Witch Project. It had a $60,000 budget. As a main, he's chosen Primer, $7,000 budget. To pair with Primer as a wine, he's chosen Reservoir Dogs. So you can go and have your nice little steak dinner with Primer, and then we'll come and pour out a nice little red for you in Reservoir Dogs. And if you ask nicely, I might even serve an ear in there for you. And for dessert, he's chosen Godzilla -1. So again, 10 to 15 million, pretty low budget, fantastic film. And that's his vibe. He's gone for genius on a budget. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Do you want to give it a crack?
Okay. Yeah. So for this, I'm gonna start us off with a little Denzel film called Deja Vu.
Okay.
Deja Vu. It's time travel-ish. It's more of like hopping onto a different timeline.
Cool.
Through means where he's a cop, finds out that that's accidentally happened, and now he has enough to solve this murder that's going to happen. And it's So let's start with that. I'm gonna have
So then your main would be Primer, and then
main is Primer.
If I was coming over to pour a bit of wine for you, what would I be pouring in your glass?
I'm gonna pair it up with we're gonna keep the time and timelines thing going here. So we're gonna pair it with Minority Report.
Ooh, nice. I got to see that recently. Actually, I watched that with Kate just before I left the States. Awesome film.
Okay. Yeah, surprisingly good.
It is the Tom Cruise, Steven Spielberg one, like the future cop kind of vibe.
Yeah,
so good.
But like, I really want you to really marinate in our timelines are not set. You know what I mean? Because that's the crux of this film.
Yeah.
And then for dessert, dessert is I don't have a film for dessert. I have a TV show for dessert.
Let's hear it.
But now I can't think of the name.
I mean, I might know it. Who's in it? Is it Russian Doll?
It's a no. So it's a time travel show. I've actually only seen the first season, but the first season was excellent, and it's a German one with a one-word title.
Dark.
It's Dark. I think it is Dark.
Yeah, I've seen the first episode, which was awesome, but I hadn't seen the rest of it.
Yeah, it's it kind of does similar things, but it's cool because the show Dark, it actually separates 3 timelines. So you travel here, you can. This is their a present, and then there's things that happened 30 years ago in this town. And they accidentally end up interacting with some of those things, or
right. Okay.
With some of those things. And so the things that are happening in the present of the film have been affected and are, there's some weird parts in there.
Yeah, I've heard it gets pretty wacky.
End up dating a relative because you went
classic
back in time and you didn't know,
Yeah.
Classic Marty McFly type of stuff.
And it happens. His mom was a baddie. I get it.
His mom was a baddie. His dad's an idiot. His dad's like, you guys never fool around or anything? Because why does my son look exactly like him? Like,
yeah. I'm surprised that was never a conversation. Again, it's one of those like rules we don't speak about. No, they're great picks. So run it by me again. So you had your appetizer is
The appetizer is Deja Vu.
cool, and then we've got for your main primer, and then
This primer
your
paired
wine,
with Minority Report.
amazing, and then dark for dessert.
For dessert, we got dark.
Amazing.
Or you know what? I also have a lot of love for the show Travelers.
Okay.
I think that did a lot of really good stuff with it.
Dark and Travelers. Okay, cool. I'll check that out. Sweet. Well, mine, I was really happy with as well. I've named my set menu, Aw, You Thought You Were the Protagonist? And I've gone for films that have that kind of vibe. And so for an appetizer, we're going with Tenet. You've got a guy screaming, John David Washington screaming, I am the protagonist. And it's like, are you? I don't know that you are.
You want to be so hard.
Yeah, like you're there, but it's kind of like this. It's almost like this is your story in the future, but right now, it's like it is kind of somebody else's story. I like what's called Robert Pattinson's character in that film a lot, and it's like I think it's a lot of his story, just from somebody else's perspective. So I like that he's not. It's like you're the main character, but you don't really know what's going on here. That's kind of the vibe I went for here. Then we've got Primer as our main. To pair with that as a wine, I've gone with Sicario, another film in which the protagonist is not necessarily the protagonist, but they think that they are. And it does this fantastic, This fantastic decision towards like the last act of the film where the protagonist actually like, not the protagonist changes, but the point of view changes. And we realize whose story it was all along. And I think that's insanely powerful and insanely effective. And like we said, you pair that with Primer where you kind of have the same sort of thing. Like, we're seeing or hearing the story from the perspective of like Adam 1 and watching Adam 2 experience it. It's like, you're not the main guy, bro. You're not him. And then the last one is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So dessert. This one's a little bit sweeter, but it's a bit of bittersweet. This is my favorite movie of all time. Equal with like Sing Street.
My favorite movie of all time.
Oh, I knew I liked you. Yeah, but I think it's actually one that we discussed you bringing on, and I must have been like, I did it as an episode already for Kay. So because it's one of our early episodes.
No, I very much remember like hearing about this, and I was like, I want to do Eternal Sunshine, and you're like, we did that last week. I was like,
no, yeah. But that was one of my favorite ones to bring to Kay, and I think also the same scenario. Like in that one, I don't necessarily want to like spoil any element of it. I want people to go in and just watch that film blind, but like it may or may not fall into this kind of category too. So yeah, that's mine. We've got Tenet as your appetizer, Primer as your main, Sicario as a wine, and Eternal Sunshine as Spotless Mind for dessert. And it's called Aw, You Thought You Were the Protagonist. But yeah, that's pretty much all we have time for today, guys. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. And thank you to all listeners for joining us today. And I'm Naf, and you can find me at Seen by Naf and anywhere that you use social medias. Kay is at Movie Man Opinions, anywhere you find people as well, unless X, formerly Twitter, where they didn't allow him the S. They could double or triple the amount of characters you can write in a tweet, but they couldn't add one more to usernames. So yeah. And Pep in chat also recommended Continuum. And said it's peak timey wimey wibbly wobbly, and then also recommended Doctor Who as well. So also a great choice. But Choco, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm Darth Choco on TikTok, Darth Choco on YouTube. You can follow Dyad in the Force, the Dyad in the Force podcast.
Hell yeah.
It happens Friday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and we just talk Star Wars and hang out, and we would be honored if you would join us.
I love it. And what sort of things can people expect to find when they come and find you, besides you stomping on trolls?
You'll find us just enjoying stuff, Yes. Lately we have been talking about there's been some wacky stuff going on in the Star Wars community, so we do have to stand up and be adults and say our piece. But it's more about fun, about enjoying being a geek, enjoying Star Wars. We're gonna be doing a lot more content with anime and animation stuff, and honestly, going back and rewatching this film has kind of put me back in that movie phase as well.
I mean, hey, that's what we do, baby.
Yeah, like movies are like a commitment versus like watching an episode of a show, But then I'm like,
yeah,
but it was so good.
Yeah, Yeah, it's like I was telling listeners earlier that on Letterboxd there's a list that I've saved and it's like highest rated films under 90 minutes and you can just jump in and watch those. And so there's a bunch that I've been doing recently to smash out, and there was one that I watched the other day with Joaquin Phoenix called You Were Never Really Here. Have you heard of that?
No.
Put that on your list. It's at both at once the most and least violent film I've ever seen. It's like Joaquin Phoenix is playing a guy who helps people get their kids back when their kids have been, you know, what's the word? Kidnapped.
Taken.
Yeah. So he's just the guy who helps people get their kids back, and he kind of gets pulled into this big conspiracy of like all this bigger thing that's going on, and it's a ride, dude. It's a ride.
And I love it. I feel like lately there's so much like conversation around, well, on Rotten Tomatoes it says this or says that, and you're like, that's never mattered. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a lot of the best films of all time flubbed. No one went to see it. They didn't market. They didn't know how to market it. Some of them. Looking at you, Edge of Tomorrow.
A great
uh,
film. That again, yeah, like
and then it eventually finds its audience, and then it blows back up.
there's another one of those that I heard about recently that I kind of fell victim to its marketing and I didn't check it out, and it's kind of developing a cult following now, and it's Jennifer's Body with Megan Fox. It's like she was coming out of Transformers. Yeah, and they were trying to just market it like it's like a sexy girl romp thing, and it's like, no, it's not that at all. There's actually quite a lot of depth to it, and the director and the writer and even Megan Fox have gone on record talking about how the marketing just like screwed the film. There's a cult following for it right now, and so that's on my list to check out really soon as well. Again, hoping somebody like brings it to the podcast. That'd be great, but otherwise I'm going to check it out myself. But it is interesting how that happens, and we always talk about studios will often, we can always trust them to learn the wrong lesson, you know. Which is has me a little tumultuous for the future of Star Wars. But we'll see how it goes. And I think that it's one of the reasons why we love you guys and we connect with you guys so much is that we're in a very similar boat. Like I love talking about films. I love dissecting films, and I can be like critical of films as well. And if you look through like my letterbox, like usually there's things that I love and I'll also go, and this didn't quite work and this didn't quite work. And because I'm kind of trying to use it as a space for me to learn a bit more for when I'm ready to kind of put something together. You know, that's my dream, to put something out there for people to watch and see, and I want it to be as good as possible, you know? And so I think that there's a space to, I think, as you said in your videos, like be critical and be honest. And I've seen you, for example, in like most recent videos talk about Acolyte and some things that didn't quite work for you. And it's like, that's okay. Like, it's okay. We can talk about this stuff like that. But I think it's actually so much more fun and so much more rewarding and so much more inviting to talk about things that we love and the things that we loved about it, you know? And that's what we do here.
A lot more energizing of a conversation.
Yeah, you're right. It is kind of exhausting to like, you know, it's the fear sometimes of opening up with a new Star Wars fan and kind of being like, how is this going to go?
Well, in tearing something down, you can say stuff that applies to everything.
Yeah.
They say something that applies to all films, all movies. It doesn't require much brain power or anything like that. But if you really enjoyed something, then you notice stuff. I mean, I always look at it like music. You know, I don't like country music. So for me, it all sounds the same. I swear to God, there's like 6 different country voices, and all singers, male or female, all share those 6 voices for the entire genre, right? But I grew up like a Midwestern emo kid, and I hear the difference between emo and screamo and post-hardcore and you know, shoegazing music and like and all this stuff that a lot of people would be like, oh, that sounds the same. But since I enjoy it, I can hear the nuances, hear the differences, hear what makes it special. And there's so much more meat in that conversation. Than there is in like, it's bad. I didn't like it. The writing was bad, so it was bad. And it made me feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's and I think, like you said, it's very energizing. I feel like asking someone, hey, why did you love this? And hearing them talk about it is always like, you see the light. You see it light up in their eyes, you know? And so that's why we always love doing this. Yeah, we love bringing people on with something that matters to them and letting them share it with us, letting them talk about it. So yeah, I'm glad we got to have that time with you today.
Yeah, glad to be invited. Thank you so much. And yeah, sorry about the overflowing on the time.
It's so good. It's so
next
good.
time,
It happens.
I will come back with a new movie and I'll blow y'all freaking minds.
Or
on
maybe it
time.
could be Deja Vu with Denzel. I haven't seen it. I reckon Keegan hasn't, but well, I'm sure we'll figure it out. But a reminder to listeners that you can find all the links to our individual pages in the descriptions below, and there's a Google form you can fill out if there's a specific creator or film you'd love to see on the podcast. And you can also find One with the Films on Instagram and TikTok and all your favorite podcasting platforms. But for now, as promised, you can feast your eyes on the next film on the weekly watch list, as well as our next guest. So.
Oh god. Hey guys, it's me, Pep, aka Element 7. The guys at One with the Films wanted me to help announce the next week's film and guest. If you don't know me by now, I talk about Star Wars lore on TikTok, and we have a live show, Dyad in the Force. I'm the better half of it, every Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. Now I'm going to do my very best to help them announce the next guest. Oh, it's me. Well, I guess the next guest is me, and we're going to watch The Shawshank Redemption, so you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.